Ah, skipping class. Something which I'm sure we've all done at one point or another in our lives, whether that be pretending to be sick to get out of going to school, asking to go to the bathroom for a 10-minute break, or just completely ditching class altogether. And as someone who has used all of these tactics to get out of school, I figured I would share a few stories about the times I skipped class. I would just like to note that I did not skip class that often, and if you came into this video thinking that I was about to be such a little rebel, sharing my tales about how I just barely escaped the harsh grip of the education system by the skin of my teeth, you'd be wrong. I actually was a real study nerd back in school. However, one of these stories does make me sound pretty cool, so naturally I'm saving that one for last. So when I was in 11th grade, my high school required us to take a wellness class, which is basically like health, except more useless. And I was not a fan of my wellness teacher. She took her class so seriously, and even outwardly stated that her class was the most important one that we were taking that year, even though literally the only thing we ever talked about was how video games were the root of all evil in our society. Yes, really. So yeah, not a fan. And one day, my teacher must have been running late for class or something, because she was nowhere to be seen. Now, my school operates by the 15-minute rule, which in case you don't know, basically means that if your teacher doesn't show up for class after 15 minutes of when said class was supposed to begin, you're free to leave. Now, it was reaching 20 minutes past when my wellness class was supposed to begin, and she was nowhere to be seen. My whole class started debating on whether we should leave or not. Half of the class wanted to leave, while the other half, aka the cowards, wanted to wait. Of course, I didn't care about wellness class at all, and I would take any excuse I could find to get out of it. So after another minute of waiting, I got up, wrote a message on the whiteboard saying that I had shown up for class just in case my teacher appeared, and then I bailed. A minute later, my friend, who was also in the class, ended up leaving too, along with a few other kids. My friend and I decided to hang out for the remainder of the period in the learning center at my school. We ended up telling one of the teachers at the learning center what had happened, and she said we were fine to stay there. So we just ended up spending the rest of the period watching Netflix, which was pretty fun. But then literally the next time I had wellness, my teacher got mad at us for leaving, because she apparently did show up about 40 minutes late for class, and she said that we should have waited for her, like it was our fault that she didn't show up on time in the first place. Also, in case you were wondering what she was doing that caused her to be so late, well, I was willing to give her the benefit of the doubt. I figured maybe she had a meeting that ran long, or maybe there was an emergency at home. Nope! She literally forgot she had class that period, and yet she still got mad at us for leaving. So yeah, I didn't like that teacher, but she ended up quitting the next year, so it's all good. Then a few weeks later, pretty much the same thing ended up happening in my A-Push class. Oh yeah, I took A-Push by the way. I know, I'm so cool. Nerd! Just in case you don't know, A-Push stands for AP US History. But anyway, one day my A-Push teacher just didn't show up for class, and since I already had some experience with this scenario from my wellness class, I had my escape plan all mapped out. AKA, I would just do the same thing I did last time. I waited a little past 16 minutes, my teacher never showed up, so I bailed. A few kids followed after me, and I ended up getting another free period, so that was nice. The good thing was my A-Push teacher was pretty cool, so he didn't get mad at us for leaving. He also had a legitimate reason for missing class, and he apologized for inconveniencing us. Man, that guy was a great teacher. This last story is a tad different and a bit more extreme than the other two. So when I was in 8th grade, I went to a Catholic school, and at that school we had to take a religion class. And one day in my class, my teacher decided to show us a movie about Dorothy Day, since at the time people were talking about how she was going to be made a saint. And let me tell you, I ended up learning a lot about Dorothy Day back then, and saint is definitely not a word I would use to describe that woman, but that's beside the point. Anyway, while we were watching the movie, some scenes started to get a little too steamy for my liking, if you catch my drift. And I would just like to reiterate, I am a Christian who grew up in a Catholic household, and if you know anything about Catholics, you know that we are not big fans of fanoodling scenes in movies. So you better believe that I was not too happy when I saw this happening in a movie being played in my religion class. Side note, when I was in 6th grade, my English teacher forced us to watch an R-rated movie called Troy because we were reading the Iliad. And let me tell you, that was way too much for my 11-year-old Christian eyes to handle seeing. And if you've seen this movie, you know exactly what I'm talking about. Point being is my parents were not too happy after hearing about that, and it ended up becoming a whole thing, which I'll probably go into more detail with in another video. But while I was sitting in my religion class, I was getting flashbacks to that very painful time in my adolescent life, and I knew that I did not want to go through that fight again. I also realized that I was actually allowed to say no to stuff that I was uncomfortable with, which I certainly was not aware of back when I was in 6th grade. So I told my teacher that I didn't want to watch the movie, and I asked to leave the classroom. My teacher wasn't too happy that I didn't want to watch the movie, and though I tried to calmly explain to her why, she did not want to hear any of my reasons, so we ended up getting into a huge fight in the middle of the hallway. I demanded that I be moved out of the classroom until they were done watching the movie, and long story short, after a lot of screaming and arguing, I was excused from the class. class and sent to hang out in the library. I was asked to write a short paper on the life of Dorothy Day, but after I finished that, I was free to work on homework and study. And trust me, if you've been to Catholic school, you know that having any extra time to get homework done is a godsend. They really like to lay it down hard on you there. Also, because I was excused from watching the movie, another kid in my class who also felt uncomfortable but was too afraid to say anything about it was also allowed to leave. Despite everything that happened though, I actually still really liked my religion teacher, and to this day she remains one of my favorite teachers I've ever had. And she never let what happened impact our student-teacher relationship, despite how easy it would have been for her to take her anger out on me in class. That's how you know you have a good teacher. So that just goes to show you, if you're ever uncomfortable with a situation, say something about it. Especially if you're a kid in grade school or middle school, because a lot of you may not be completely aware of this yet, but if a teacher is trying to make you do something that you know in your gut you should not be doing, you absolutely have the right to say no. And I don't mean something like you don't want to do your homework or any of that garbage, because I know you know what I mean. Also, if you do end up in a situation where you have to stand up for yourself against a teacher, you could quickly gain a reputation as a cool, tough kid who doesn't take any crap from anybody. I mean, at least that's how it worked out for me, and trust me, when you're in middle school, that's not a bad reputation to have. But first and foremost, respect your teachers, and expect that they treat you with as much decency as you give them.